Bismillah. Welcome back, Zoo Crew. So, before we even get started into today's topic, I'm going to let you all know there's two books you need to go and read. The first one, it's A History of Central Banking, and the second one is The Fourth Turning. If you want to understand what the hell is going on in the economy and why it's happening, these two books will give you most of the information you need to know. Okay? And Yeah. So we're going to start with that. And these are the two topics we're going to be talking about today. Essentially, we're going to be talking about the state of the economy, why it's in this state, how we got here, and really, I guess let's backtrack a little bit. The thing is, if you want to know the future, you have to study history. So to see the future, you need to study the past, right? So when I was doing my predictions in 2020 that all ended up becoming true, it's because I studied history. I studied the past, I looked at the cycles, I looked at the trends and the patterns, and was able to come up with my own predictions. And sure enough, they all ended up becoming true. So again, go and read The Fourth Turning and A History of Central Banking. And if you don't like reading, go on YouTube, find a summary, and I'm sure once you kind of get some of the information from this book, you're going to be inclined to go and get all the information from these books. And then again, these are like your starting points, right? This will set you off on your journey. So, let's get into it. So in Islam, we have we call it riba. And in the modern Western world, they call it usury or interest, right? And there is a reason why in Islam, riba is one of the major sins, right? To the point where it's stated that God has declared war on riba, those who partake in it, and etc., right? So, why is it that in Islam, a religion from like thousands of years ago, riba is haram? And even in Christianity, usury is against the religion. Why is that? Because it's very immoral, first of all, and it's essentially a way for people to buy power and destabilize governments. Okay. So if you look into the history of central banking and like how it started, I guess, okay, let's pause here for a second because I'm sure some of you are like, what the fuck is a central bank? So there's two kinds of banking systems. There's state banking and then there's central banking. State banking, it means that the government owns their bank and they create money based on the amount of gold they have in their reserves, right? So this is what Gaddafi tried to implement. And what happened to him? He got killed, right? So anyone in history who's tried to start a state bank either gets killed or thrown into a war. And it's not by coincidence, It's literally by design. Now, a central bank is the complete opposite. So in America, they'd had Bretton Woods. So go and Google Bretton Woods and you'll see what happened. Essentially, they decided that we're not going to keep our dollar pegged to gold anymore. So they can just print as much money as possible. So central banks can literally inflate and deflate a currency based on their will, right? So there's a group of people who will go from country to country. So they'll go to a country, they'll try and implement a central bank, or they will implement a central bank, essentially taking control of the country without letting it known to the public that they're now in control of the country, right? Because by all metrics, like when you look from the outside, you see like the king is still in power, the president's still in power, like the head of state is still in power, right? So the general public doesn't realize that the actual country is now being controlled by this group of people or like the people who started the central bank, right? I'm not gonna like get into who these people are. You can go and read these books and figure it out for yourself. Or if you have common sense, like you'll put two and two together and figure out what it is that I'm talking about, right? So essentially, this group of people will go to a country, they'll start a central bank, and essentially, like, this is another reason why usury and like riba is a bad thing or considered immoral, right? And the kings of medieval times realized that these people are using money to buy power and like you shouldn't be able to buy power. You know what I mean? Because like the people who are the ruling class or the monarchs, they go through a certain kind of like they're raised in a certain way, right? They have bonds and like heritage with their land. So at the end of the day, they're still looking out for their people. Whereas like when you have usury in the mix, these people don't give a shit about who they're impacting or who they're affecting because they have no ties to the land, no ties to the people living there either, right? For them, it's all about power. So essentially, they'll come into this country, they'll destabilize the country, and then they get banished from the country, right? So they'll go to the next country and do the same thing. And then they'll go to the next country and do the same thing, right? To the point where, like, if you think about it, what does Gaddafi, Hitler, JFK, all of these people have in common? They were anti central banking and they wanted state banking, right? And what happened? They were killed or thrown into a war. And again, like go do your own research. Like for all intents and purposes, like everything I'm saying is just a conspiracy theory. It's not true. Okay. It's up to you to go and find out what's the truth and what's not the truth. So again, like you have all these, so you, and like this is literally what's going on right now in our economy. This is what's going on in America. This is what's going on all over the world, right? We've allowed the central banking system to get so powerful that it's created a bunch of debt slaves, right? So people think like, oh yeah, slavery was abolished. Slavery was not abolished. It's just been rebranded, right? It's marketing, really. Now slavery is debt slavery, right? And like even if you go to third world countries, like there are literally modern day slaves, like people getting paid less than a livable wage to do like chores or like housework and like driving, etc. You know, so like in my opinion, that is the equivalent of slavery. Okay, so a state banking system is the solution because then what can they do? They can loan out money to entrepreneurs, they can loan out money to their citizens at 0% interest, right? Whereas with a central bank, what's happening is they print money, first of all, devaluing the whole currency, and then they loan it to the government at a fixed interest rate, right? And then now the government or like yeah will like pass that money on to private banks who pass it on to the citizens, right? So every single step along the way there's interest involved, and this is why I was saying well the government might just end up going bankrupt, right? Because like so much money has been printed, and like again even like in Canada and America and all of these countries with central banks, people think that's a part of the government. That's not a part of the government. That's like its own institution. That's its own private business, you could say, right? And then now like the government becomes indebted to this bank, right? Whereas like with a state bank, they don't become indebted to anybody. It's like whatever gold they have in reserves, that's how much like currency is in their market. And that's why like they don't have to worry about inflation and then like the prices of everything going up or like their currency losing value. Because again, when we're talking about inflation, literally it just means your currency is losing value, right? And then beyond this, right? Like tax is literally silent inflation. Tax is how the government steals the wealth from its citizens. Okay? Ask yourself this, how does the government make money? They only have two sources of income. One is printing money slash borrowing money from the central bank, and two is taxation. So, what do they do with the taxes? They use it to do like public welfare. They use it to take care of the roads, etc., right? But essentially all they're doing is redistributing wealth. And people who have never like earned their own money will never value something that's just being given to them, right? And the COVID proved this. And now like again, this is like all propaganda what's going on, right? So there's so much news in the media right now like, oh, immigrants are stealing your job. The problem is immigrants. The problem is immigrants. Because what do they want? They want to have the population divided, right? They don't want people to become aware of who the actual enemy is. And I guess I should be careful when I'm saying enemy, but really like the source of all of these issues is the government. That's why they want to keep everybody divided. So they're distracted from what they're doing and like fighting amongst themselves, right? So now everyone is like upset about immigrants or like defending immigrants. And like immigrants is not the problem. First of all, Like if you think about it, the immigrants who came like in my dad's generation or like prior, these were all hardworking individuals, and these people didn't have any of the benefits that the immigrants of today have, right? So even these immigrants are anti the new immigrants, and it's not even that they're anti the new immigrants, it's just they're anti the system, right? So what happens is all of the citizens are working their asses off, can't afford shit because they're getting taxed left, right, and center on everything. And then those benefits are going to the new immigrants. And again, this is how the government is buying votes, right? So they can stay in power. So, and this is why I'm saying you need to read The Fourth Turning, because history literally will repeat itself, right? So we are long overdue for either like a world war or a civil war. And like for those of you who know me, I've literally been saying this since 2020. It's going to get to a point where you're going to have like people without assets turning on the people with assets, and there's going to be a civil war between the haves and the have-nots, right? And it's literally going to be a bloodbath. So like when you hear people say like, "Oh, we're going to eat the rich," this is what they're talking about. So, and like again, it's like people are being manipulated by the government, right? The enemy is not the people with the assets. The enemy is the person creating this whole situation. The people who are purposefully devaluing your money and stealing your wealth without you even realizing it, right? So not only does tax steal the wealth from its citizens, it literally is silent inflation, because now when businesses have to pay more in tax, landlords have to pay more in tax, what is the like first thing they think of? Okay, well now we have to charge more, right? Because they have expenses they have to cover. And then who eats the cost of that? That's all of the regular citizens, right? And again, like when inflation hits, people who own assets, businesses, real estate, like hard assets, these things absorb the inflation, right? So like now they create such a big disparity or like a gap between people who have nothing and people who have something, right? And what's happening is the middle class is getting wiped out. And this is all by design, right? So again, like this could all just be a conspiracy theory that I'm just saying, so you don't have to believe me. You don't have to take my word for it. Go do your own homework. Go do your own research, right? My whole point is to kind of shed some light on all of this and allow you guys to go and form your own opinions, right? Do your own research and come to your own conclusions. At the end of the day, look, um, I believe in libertarianism. I think that is the only solution for the mess we're in now, right? And in all honesty, like just given how my predictions have turned out, my own knowledge about economics, finance, business, and like my own code of morals and ethics, like I've been debating, and like honestly for a long time I've like told myself one day I'll be like president or prime minister. So now I'm at a point where I'm like seriously like shit, like maybe I should actually run for prime minister, you know? Because if anyone can clean up this country, it's probably me. Just given like the amount of like crazy shit I've gone through and had to clean up in my life, plus being like on the ground dealing with homeless people for like more than a decade, housing homeless people. And like, so I've seen both sides of the equation, right? And then again, like where I went to high school, that's like the top 1% of the city, like all of the people who run the city's kids are there, right? So now I've been exposed to that world, right? And then again, like because I've traveled to like Pakistan so many times and other third world countries, like I'm exposed to all of these things, you know? So maybe one day I will run for prime minister. Who knows? Because really, liberals, conservative, etc. Like these people are not the solution. These are career politicians, and they're not capable of fixing any of these problems. Because again, if they were, we wouldn't have these problems. It's that simple, you know? And yeah, like I mean, so the first, like the biggest issue is central banking, and then like the other issue is now like they're creating division amongst the citizens, and like literally just stirring up fucking chaos because it's a mind game, it's distractions, right? So in ancient Greece, what happened? They had this, or like ancient Rome, this is where the concept or the term bread and circuses comes from, right? So what they were doing was they were filing out the inside of these coins and filling it with lead. So the weight would be the same, but the value is not the same. And to keep people from like uprising, they introduced the games at the Colosseum. So gladiators, right? They provide, that's the circus, and then they provided bread. So now people are fed and entertained, and they won't question anything. So again, that's literally what's going on in our world right now. People are entertained. can't even sit with themselves still for a minute. They can't be bored without going crazy. They have to be consuming some kind of entertainment. And then the same thing, like they're being fed terrible food, first of all, which is like fucking up their health and their mental health and like their physical bodies. But then outside of that, like Canada is literally the best country in the world to come to if you want to be on welfare. Like the government literally pays you to sit at home, drink Mountain Dew, eat your Doritos, and play Xbox, right? And people are catching on to this, like to the point where like they'll coach new immigrants on like, yeah, go to Canada because you won't have to work, right? And like so the people who are working and creating value are now feeling taken advantage of. And I think that's totally fair because it's like a lot of these people, like a lot of Canadians, work very hard and like we have terrible ass winters. And then to like feel like you're not being valued, like it makes sense, you know, like you wouldn't want to keep working or you wouldn't want to feel like somebody else is benefiting off your hard work, right? So, in my honest opinion, tax should be abolished. Tax doesn't benefit anybody, right? And like again, this is why I'm saying libertarianism is the solution. So I guess that's the third thing you guys should research is libertarianism, what it means, what it's all about. And you know, like there is a libertarian party in Canada, which I just recently found out about. And I don't know why more people don't know about this and why they aren't more popular, but maybe now, given the state of things, they will become more popular, you know, because really, like, I was scrolling through my Instagram yesterday. Honestly, like, that's something I need to stop doing because I'm spending way too much time on my phone again. And but yeah, the point was like every single reel that I came across for like maybe 30 to 40 minutes was Canadians talking about the state of the economy, exposing the government and their lies, and just like all of these things that we're talking about, right? But again, it's like a little piece here, a little piece there, a little piece there. Nobody's actually coming and explaining how we ended up here, which is why I figured, okay, let me just like drop some knowledge on y'all, you know? And this is stuff I learned from my own research. This is stuff I picked up along the way from different mentors. This is stuff I picked up from books, right? And this is why it's important to read books and seek out the information in these books, right? You got to be careful what kind of books you're reading, but for the most part, like well, at least these two books that I've recommended, you should go and read. Okay. And yeah, I mean, I really didn't know where I was going with this video or like how long it would end up being, just because this is like a huge topic and like it expands into so many other topics, you know? But I guess the key takeaway of today is this is why riba slash usury is haram, because it's literally used as a way to buy power and destabilize governments, which is why the group of people who will come to your country and start central banking get banished, right? So throughout history, these people have gone to different countries and literally been kicked out because they destabilize the whole country they go to, right? And like if you think about it, like loaning money and charging interest, like that shouldn't be allowed just because you're not being productive by any means, you know? You're literally just like benefiting off other people's work. And then let's say somebody is in hard times and they need a loan, right? To like go about their business or to hold on to their land or whatever. And like because you're charging so much interest, they're never going to be able to pay back that loan. And then what happens? You take over their business, you take over their land, etc. Right? So this whole system is like corrupt and should not exist. And in my opinion, this is another reason or like another thing that drew me back to Islam, right? Because yeah, I was born Muslim, but I got to a point where it was like it was forced down my throat and I didn't want to be Muslim. As far as like I went to like the whole other end, like I was pretty much atheist and I was like debating people from the point of view of science, proving them wrong as to like why God doesn't exist, right? And then it's only after my life blew up and like I went through this whole like I had this moment where I felt like I was brought to the mosque, and like God was speaking to me through this person, that I started to be like, okay, let me like look into the actual religion, right? So even now I'm at a point where it's like I don't subscribe to these like sects within Islam. So it's like I'm not Sunni, I'm not Shia, I'm literally just Muslim, you know? Everything else is like just created by some other people, you know? And like this is like the true form or the true essence of the religion. Literally like has the solutions to all of these problems. So like had we been following the rules, we wouldn't be in this mess right now. You know what I mean? Because literally like if riba didn't exist, We wouldn't have people who are like, oh, I can't afford things because there's too much inflation because the central bank is like devaluing our currency and all of the other like in literally creating debt slaves, you know? But yeah, I'm gonna end it here. That's a wrap. If you found this video interesting, or if you found some of this information interesting, or like this is all new to you, let me know what you think in the comment section. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button and subscribe because this is kind of the direction we're going, I think, for these videos, at least for the time being, you know? And yeah, there was something else I wanted to say, but the train of thought has left the station. So if I remember it, I will remember it. Otherwise, yeah, I mean, that's it, Zoo Crew. It's been a long day. It's been a weird few days for me. It's been a weird year, I guess I could say. you know, it still hasn't like hit me that, well, oh, we're in 2026 now. It's a new year, you know? So even like when I'm talking about shit from like just last month, like I'm thinking like, yeah, just like a couple months ago. And then it's like somebody will be like, yo, you mean last year? And I'm like, oh shit, you're right. It was last year, you know? So yeah. All right, Zoo Crew. Peace out. We'll see you tomorrow.